And let me now welcome onto the program somebody I've been asking about the budget for many, many years. Rahul Bhasin, always a pleasure to have you with us, managing partner at Bearing Private Equity Partners. Rahul, a very important budget, partly because it's a very bad environment out there. Now, there's going to be some politics. This is the last full budget before the general elections next year. But the first priority perhaps would be to make sure that the economy keeps ticking along smoothly at a time of global recession.
Absolutely. And, I think that the fact that there hasn't been too much tinkering, I think is a great thing. And I think that our economy actually seems to be quite robust by all measures. I think we will get impacted to some extent by the slowdown globally. But I do think that given how strong a position this government is in electorally and etc., they shouldn't take their eye off the long-term structural changes which are required. And I think that I would be very excited to see some of those kinds of changes and introductions to be brought in this kind of budget.
So when you say not too much tinkering, that's an important point, because a lot of people say that budget should actually start becoming a little bit boring. Don't have radical changes in indirect tax slabs every year going up and down, or too many changes. And that's starting to happen when you get a certain amount of stability, which we are seeing in GST. However, this time there is an expectation that either in capital gains or in personal income tax, there may actually be changes, and major changes.
I think to the extent that the system is simplified and changing and making one tax rate for both private assets as well as publicly traded assets, I think that would be actually a move in the right direction. I also believe that one should not tax mobility of capital, and I think that this is something that I've raised before, that if a saver is moving his savings from one instrument to another instrument, he should not be taxed for it. If he sells A share and buys B share, I think that there should not be capital gains. And I think that the right way to address this issue from a practical perspective is that all savers should be forced to have two accounts. One is a savings account and one is a transaction account. And in the account, the savings account, whatever his investments are, if he shifts from A to B to C, that should not be taxed. But the minute he moves money from that in investment account to a savings account or his transaction account, that should be simply added on to his income. And I think that would be the most straightforward, simple kind of framework.
So one of the things that you, Rahul, and many others in the private equity and in the venture capital space have been speaking about for a while is doing away with the differential that exists between listed equity and unlisted equity. Right now, both in terms of definitions there and the actual tax rate, capital gains on unlisted is much higher than in listed. And that's something which I know people have been clamoring for a long time, saying it needs to be fixed. So the logic of that is clear. Are you hopeful that something will finally be done this year?
There are rumors before every budget that this will change, but so far it hasn't. And I think that, to my mind, if it happens this year, fabulous. If it doesn't happen this year, it'll happen next year or year after next. I mean, it's inevitable that rationalization will take place. It makes no sense to have this kind of two-tiered or two-structured kind of tax slabs. But I think what's, to my mind, much more important is that there are lots of areas which, the budgets and the fiscal policy of a government should address. And I would like to sort of take this opportunity to raise it in the discussion forums. And I think that one of the big challenges, and you hear a lot about this whole subject of ESG, right? Environmental, social governance kind of architectures. And I think one of the reasons why that's so popular is that often societal costs, environmental costs, sustainability costs are not equal to economic costs. And I think any budget architecture or fiscal architecture of the government should ensure that if there's a societal cost, an environmental cost of any nature, that is actually reflected in economic costs.
All right, Rahul, thank you so much for joining us with that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Vikram.